So let's turn our Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 13. If you don't know where that is, it's right after 1 Samuel chapter 12. Right before 1 Samuel chapter 14, it's on page 153. I'll give you a second to find it. And while you're doing that, I'll talk a little bit about Saul, because we're going to talk a lot about Saul. Saul was the first king of Israel. He was the king who really didn't want to be king, and Samuel didn't want him to be king just because Samuel didn't want a king. He said, God is the king of Israel. But the people said, we want a king just like everybody else has a king. We want to be like all the other nations. Samuel said, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Don't do it. And but the people, they insisted. And God said, hey, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. I got a guy for you. You could choose him. They'll love him. He's good looking, all that stuff. That's all they care about, right? And so Saul's out looking for his donkeys with the servant. They've been gone for a few days. And then they go see Samuel, and Samuel says, hey, I know why you came. Donkeys are safe. You're going to be king. But bam. All right, that's a short version of it. Then Saul goes home. His uncle says, so what happened? It's like, oh yeah, I went to go see Samuel, and he told me the donkeys were fine. He didn't say anything about becoming the king. Then Samuel gathers all of Israel together and says, all right, you guys wanted a king. Here's the king that God chose for you. And he's not there. Like, where is he? Where's Saul? Where is the guy I said was going to be king? God has to speak to them. He's hiding in the luggage. That's what. They bring him out. The New King James Version says he's taller than any other man from the shoulders up. Okay, so I think he's got a huge head. That's my personal understanding. Some people says maybe he has a long neck. I don't know. But anyway, he's different. You can see, like, this is the guy that, like, oh, that's the guy. That's the king we should follow. He looks like a king. So they make him king, and then he just goes home. And then he says he's following the herds again the next time we see him. He's following the herds. He's not being a king. He's not doing what God told him to do. He's like, well, that was weird. And he goes back to his old life. Until Israel is getting attacked, and Saul hears about it, and then God moves on Saul's heart. It's like, well, let's go get him. Let's go save our people. And he gathers a bunch of people together. They go rescue. Great victory in the Lord. And then we get to chapter 13. Well, that was chapter 11. Chapter 12 is Samuel coming like, all right, you guys wanted a king. This is what's going to happen when you guys have a king. And he tells them about all that stuff. And obey the Lord. Stop sinning, you guys, and let's move on. So chapter 13, verse 1, Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. So usually when they had armies, it's like, oh no, someone's attacking. Hey, everybody get your swords and weapons and let's go fight them. And the people would put down their plows and their farming tools, and they would grab their instruments of war, and they would go make war. So I was like, I'm going to have a standing army. I'm going to have people who are always ready to fight. We're going to pay them out of the state treasury, and 2,000 are going to hang with me, and 1,000 are going to be with my son Jonathan. So I like Jonathan, by the way, not just because he has my name, although I did know this, but Jonathan's got a great write-up in the Bible. I don't know if you've read much of 1 Samuel, but whenever you read about Jonathan, it's always something cool, except for the part where he dies. You know, but every other time, he's doing a good thing. He loves the Lord. He's a great man of faith, which is why I like this so much. And I'm so happy my parents named me after this guy, because I don't think my parents know who this guy is. I think like, oh, it's a Bible name, just pick him. You know, it's like, well, great. Ahab's a Bible name. I'm glad I wasn't named Ahab. So Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent away, every man to his tent. So as we go through chapter 13 and 14, I want you guys to focus on two people, Jonathan, because, and his dad Saul. And you will see such a difference between the two guys. Between Jonathan, who is a man of God, and Saul, who's kind of doing his own thing. And if you have to identify yourself with one of them, I hope it's Jonathan. But if it's Saul, there's hope. There is. Okay, verse 3. And Jonathan attacked the garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah, and the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. So Jonathan goes and attacks with his 1,000 guys, goes and attacks the Philistines. I don't know if Saul was like planning on attacking the Philistines. I don't know if he told Jonathan to attack the Philistines. My personal view, and you don't have to believe me to be a Christian or anything on this, I think Saul was like, all right, I'm king. Let's set up the kingdom. We have a standing army now. We're doing this. And Jonathan's like, all right, let's go. And he goes and attacks the Philistines. And Saul's like, wait a minute, But then Jonathan's winning, and so he blows the horn. And so now everyone thinks that Saul is attacking the Philistines. Everyone thinks that Saul has the victory because the guy who blows the horn is the guy that's in charge. He's the guy who's leading because there were no cell phones, no radios at that time. You couldn't say, all right, everybody move to the west. You would just have some guy blow a horn, and everybody would go towards the sound. So it's like Jonathan does this great victory. Saul gets there. It's like, all right, now let's call everybody in. And everybody comes in, and they see Saul with the horn. They think he did it. And you're like, well, how do you know they think Saul did it? Because I read the next verse. That's what happens before I come here. I read the whole thing. Okay, now all Israel heard it said that Saul had attacked the garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had become an abomination to the Philistines, and the people were called together to Saul at Gilgal. So here starts something that's like, I'm pretty sure made Saul unhappy. So they attack a garrison, which is, like just a group of Philistines as part of their army. They attack them, they have a great victory over them. Now the Philistines don't like the Israelites. Why? Because they got attacked. They're like, oh, I don't like this guy. Are there more Philistines or are there more Israelites? There are a ton more Philistines. So it's kind of like, you're the little guy, and I'm going to punch the big guy in the toe. It's just like, well, what are you doing? I don't like you anymore. And I'm bigger than you, so I can put pressure on you. And so that's what the Philistines did to the Israelites. Then verse 5 says, then the Philistines gathered together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen. And people as the sand which is on the seashore of the multitudes. And they came up in the camp in Michmash, which is the east of Beth-aven. All right, so 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and you can't even count the people. How many people does Israel have in their army? 3,000. Okay? They have 10 times more chariots than Israel had people. Saul's like, Jonathan, what are you thinking? What are you attacking these guys for? They were happy, we were happy, why couldn't you just let it lie? And I'm sure Jonathan's like, well, God told us to take the land, right? That's what I'm doing. When the men of Israel saw that they were in danger, for the people were distressed, the people hid in caves and thickets and rocks and holes and in pits. The Israelites saw the huge army and were like, ah! And they ran away. And they hid. Don't let them find me. Can you imagine like the places that they would hide? I'm imagining those old movies and TV shows where they speed up the action and play the silly music, and you get people running around in circles and then jumping in the garbage cans and closing the lid and hiding behind doors and jumping into a plant, and they're just trying to hide. Don't let them see me. And now Saul and Jonathan were like, where did all our guys go? And some of the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. It's like, we'll be safe over here. And I've been to the east side of the Jordan. There isn't a whole lot there. As for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Okay, this is the king they wanted. Got the king, now they're afraid. They weren't as afraid when God was their king, but now they got the human king, and they could see the size of him versus the size of the other army. Now they're afraid. And whenever you leave the Lord, you're going to be afraid. You are always going to be afraid. Even little things will scare you, like spiders. But if you have the Lord, you realize even if I'm scared of this spider, God's not scared of this spider. God's not scared of the dark. God's not scared of the enemy. God's bigger. And actually, there are two things. This is Pastor Jonathan's secret to not being afraid of anything. Two things that you realize to not be afraid. One, God is bigger than everything there is. He is the creator of the universe. He is the creator of whatever morphed into your fear. He's bigger than it. And number two, he loves me. Because if he was bigger than it, but he didn't love me, then he's like, yeah, I'll let that thing take over, Jonathan. I don't care. But he loves me. He's not going to do that. He's going to take care of me. And if he loved me, but he wasn't bigger than the thing, then it's like, well, I would like to help you out, but I can't do anything about it. But God can do something about it, and he loves me enough that he does do something about it. So I don't have to be afraid of anything. Nothing. Not even spiders. Doesn't mean I like them. I'm not going to cuddle up with them or anything. I just don't go screaming out of the room. Okay, so verse 8 says, then he, we're talking about Saul again, waited 7 days according to the time set by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and people were scattered from him. Every day, more people were leaving camp. I can't take this, Saul. The Philistines are going to come in here, and they're going to kill us. I got to go. And they would go, and they would hide. They would leave. It's like, I'm leaving you. I can't do this anymore. I can't stand with you. And every day, 7 days, it's like Saul's like, just wait till Samuel gets here. Wait till Samuel gets here. And then Samuel doesn't come. So Saul said, bring a burnt offering and peace offerings to me. And he offered the burnt offering. Now this speaks to my heart, because even though I would like to identify with Jonathan, sometimes I feel like I identify with Saul, especially at this moment. God's not showing up. I better do something. You know, it's like, how many of you have felt that same way? God hasn't showed up yet. I'm running out of time. If I don't do something now, my world's going to crumble. Something bad's going to happen. I'm going to owe a lot more money, or whatever the thing is. I'm going to miss out on the deal. Whatever the thing is, I have to act now. God never says you have to act now. God always says, just wait for me. And when you act, when God tells you to act, things work out a lot better. And this is a lesson I need to learn personally in my own life again and again and again. I need to wait for the Lord to move. Because like Jonathan, I just want to go out and do stuff. And like Saul, it's like, well, waiting's hard. I want to kind of get things done and get the ball rolling here so we can get going. And he thinks he can just offer these offerings to the Lord himself. But he can't, because he is not the right person. God says this is the job for Samuel. This is not the job for Saul. Now it happens, as it always does, as soon as he finished presenting the burnt offering, that Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him, and that he might greet him. As soon as he couldn't wait anymore, then Samuel showed up. Doesn't that speak to our lives? It's like, if I just waited another minute, it would have been fine. But I didn't. And God always does that. And sometimes it teaches me lessons. Like, well, maybe I should just wait that extra minute. Next time I'm in this bind, and I'm like, oh, I got to do something. No, I need to wait on the Lord. I want to do something, but I need to wait on the Lord. Last time he came like 2 minutes after I gave up. I should hold out a little longer. I heard of this experiment. I want to say it's true, but I really don't know. But I heard of this experiment with mice, and it's kind of cruel. So if this kind of thing weirds you out, just plug your ears for a minute. That this guy put a mouse in a bowl of water, and the mouse was swimming and couldn't get out. And right before it gave up, the guy reached in and grabbed the mouse and saved it. And then he put the mouse and another mouse in the bowl of water. And in the same amount of time that the first mouse almost gave up, one of the mice gave up and drowned. And then the other one kept going. Because he was saved the first time, he had hope that he was going to be saved the second time. And I think he went like 3 times as long as before, because he had that hope. Hope really draws us in. It really gives us time to wait. If we're like, okay, God told me this, I don't see it happening, but he promised that he would, so I'm just going to wait on it. We can wait a whole lot longer. I'm not saying it's fun, but we can wait a whole lot longer. If you just remember what the promises of God are and you trust in them. Because when you give up, God's going to say, hey, I was just around the corner. Just needed to wait a little bit longer and I would have been there for you. Because that was my perfect timing. And you couldn't wait. I kind of feel like Peter sometimes, who falls asleep when God says, just stay up and pray. Like, I'm trying, but I can't do it. And you give up and to sleep. And God says, no, I wanted you to stay up. I wanted you to wait with me. And I never liked waiting, but it's always good for me. I guess that's why God gave me a wife. You can read into that if you want to read into it. I'm just going to move on. Verse 11, and Samuel said, what have you done? Saul said, when I saw that the people were scattered from me and that you did not come within the days appointed, that the Philistines gathered together at Michmash, and I said, the Philistines will now come down on me at Gilgal. and I have not made my supplication to the Lord. Therefore I felt compelled and offered the burnt offering. Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded for you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart. Listen to that, a man after his own heart. And the Lord has commanded him to be commander over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord had commanded you. Man, the consequences of our sin. God was going to give you this blessing, but because you didn't obey him, you don't get the blessing. How sad is that? That his kingdom was going to be established forever, which means his son's going to be in the kingdom, which is his son's son, and goes on from there. But it's like, because you did this, man, God's looking after a man after his own heart. Which reveals to us something about the Lord, doesn't it? What's he looking for? He's looking for someone who's after his own heart. Are you after God's heart? What does it mean to be after someone's heart? Well, if you're married, hopefully you know. Because there are lots of things that my wife cares about, I don't care about at all. But because she loves those things, I learn about those things. I feel like I could deliver a baby right now if somebody needed me to deliver a baby, because I've heard so many stories about it. My wife's a labor and delivery nurse, in case you guys were wondering about that. You know, it's just because I hear the things, and I hear terms, and she comes home and she asks, she starts telling me about the story. I'm like, oh, did they give her Pitocin? Did they do this? Did they do that? You know, like I know the terms because she talks about it all the time. You know, she brought me to this place that we're trying to convince people to think about home births. Not to do home births, but to at least think about them. You know, and she's like, well, I don't know how to present. And so I'm like, well, sounds like you're trying to say this. Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, great, can you say it? So I went and said it in front of all those people. It's like, I don't really care if people have home births, but she cares. And because it's precious to her, it's precious to me. And I take all my stuff out of drawers, and I put a bunch of paint stuff in there because I think she loves painting. I say I think she loves painting because I'm not too sure yet. She's good at it, but it's like, try this. And whenever she does it, she's like, oh, this is so much fun. But then she never does it until I try to get her to do it again. And it's just one of those things. But I love her, and I'm after her heart. I want her heart to be happy. I want to please her. Can we do that with the Lord? Do you know what pleases the Lord? Do you know that you can please the Lord? That blows my mind away. You know, the creator of the universe who breathed and stars came out can be pleased by little insignificant me. But by me praying to him and reading his word and trying to obey him, that pleases his heart. He is so much bigger and more powerful than me, yet I can affect him. How strange is that? How cool is that? How amazing is that? As much as I try, I've never gotten on the president's radar. He has no clue who I am. Or anybody else who's important in American political society. I did get to meet our congressman once. I don't think he would know me if he saw me again. You know, just because, I'm just a little normal person who lives and eats and sleeps and works and all that stuff like you guys do. But I get a chance to put a smile on the face of the creator of the world. How cool is that? Did you know you can do that too? And if you know that you can do it, do you try to do it? Do you strive to do it? Because God's worth it, isn't he? If you're not doing that, then whose face are you trying to put a smile on? Everyone's trying to put a smile on somebody's face, right? If it's not God's, it could be, your bosses. It could be somebody you're trying to be married to. Could just be yourself. And how long do those smiles last? I could have a great day where everything goes my way, and then one thing happens. And I go home, my wife says, how was your day? Horrible. And I go into explicit detail about the one bad thing that happens. And if she had thought that, she's like, well, what about what happened before that? It's just, then it'd be great. But I just forget about all that because you focus on the horrible things. And I think we do that because we want to see if we can make them better next. Oh, I don't know why we do it, but maybe we do. But when we make God smile at us, God remembers that. He doesn't remember the other stuff that we do because our sin is cast away from as far as the east is from the west. We don't have to worry about that anymore. God remembers the good things. God remembers how you made us smile, how He made Him smile. And we do the same thing sometimes. If we love someone and God takes them home and they pass away, we don't go to the funeral and talk about all the times that they were a jerk and did things to us that we didn't like, right? We go and remember the good things. We're not going to talk ill of the dead, so we talk about the good things. Like he was such a wonderful person because he did this and he said this. And there's the one time that he went out of his way to help me when I needed help and all that. And we talk about the good stuff. We focus on the good things. God only sees the good things because our sins have been paid for and cast away. The Bible says that He remembers them no more, which means we know something that God doesn't. We know more about our sin than God does because God says, I forgot that. I'm a horrible person, God. I did this, I did that, and I'm not good at this, and blah, blah, blah. And then, we can go on and on about ourselves, and God says, I don't know what you're talking about. Because when God looks at us, He sees Jesus Christ, who He put in us. He says and says, you're my child. I love you. And we can't forget that. The enemy tries to remind us of our sin, and God tells us He forgot. Just trust Him and lean on Him. And stop trying to do everything yourself, Saul. Verse 15, and Saul arose and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin, and Saul numbered people present with him, about 600 men. So after Samuel says all this stuff, you're going to lose your kingdom, he goes off. And Saul says, all right, how many guys I got left? Where's his mind? Is his mind like, oh no, I sinned against the Lord, I need to repent? It's not. That's exactly what David did later on. That's why David's a man after God's own heart, because David sinned a ton of sins. In fact, I think the Bible records, I haven't counted, but I think the Bible records more of David's sins than anybody else's sins. I think Abraham's number 2, but David's number 1, I think, for the sins that the Bible talks about. And every time that David is rebuked, he goes to the Lord and repents. He repents. And he seeks the Lord. That's why he's a man after God's own heart. He's not perfect by any means. But he seeks the Lord. Saul doesn't seek the Lord. He's like, all right, let's talk about now. Because I'm scared now. I mean, they got a bunch of people, and I got 600. Not very many. Saul, Jonathan his son, and people present with them remained in Gibeah of Benjamin, but the Philistines encamped in Michmash. Then raiders came out of the camp of the Philistines in 3 companies. One turned down the road to Oprah. I'm not kidding, it says Oprah there. It doesn't spell it the same way, but it says Oprah, to the land of Shual. Another company turned down the road to Beth Horon, and another company turned on the road to the border that overlooks the valley of Zeboim toward the wilderness. Okay, so we got this huge Philistine camp, and you've got these 3 companies that are kind of going out enforcing Philistine law. What's the Philistine law? Let's keep reading, verse 19. Now there was no blacksmith to be found throughout the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make swords or spears. But all the Israelites would go down to the Philistines to sharpen each man's plowshare, his mattock, his axe, and his sickle. And the charge for the sharpening was a pim, for the plowshares and mattocks, the forks, and the axes, to set the points of the goads. I don't know what a bunch of that stuff is. I'm not a farmer. I grew up in the city. But I know what goads are because that has to do with another saw. Those are the sharp sticks you use to move donkeys. But the point is that they can't just sharpen the stuff themselves. They took all the blacksmiths away. So you had to go to the Philistine territory to get your farm instruments sharpened because they're like, well, we don't want you to make sword. We don't want you to make weapons. This is gun control in 1000 BC. And it's like, so we don't want you to make weapons because you can fight against us. So therefore, we're going to take out everything that you can use to make weapons. And if you want to sharpen your tools, you got to come down to us, and we'll charge you a whole pim. Do you guys know what a pim is? I don't know. I don't even know if it's pronounced pim. Maybe it's pim. Who knows? I tried to look it up. It says 3/4 of a shekel's weight. I don't know what that is. You know, and another website I tried to look it up, says half a shekel is about $5. So this is like $7.50, $8 maybe. But it sounds like it'd be more. Otherwise, they wouldn't be complaining as much, right? So who knows? Well, I just assume a pim is highway robbery, right? So when you go down there, it's like, all right, I need my axe sharpened. That'll be 1 pim, please. You know, it's just the pockets. You have to pour it out. What is it? I don't know. But anyway, so you pay your pim to get your thing sharpened. You can go home, and it's just like, we're just making sure that you're not making any weapons. And you can bet that the Israelites don't like this, because not only can they not make weapons to protect themselves, they can't defend themselves against the Philistines. If the Philistine armies decide and come, hey, we want your food now. You can't say, well, no, you can't have it. It's like, well, yes, we can, because we have weapons and you don't. You know, they can't do that, so it's like they got to take the food. And plus, if they ever need something done, they got to walk all the way to a Philistine town, and they don't want to deal with them because they're Gentiles, just to get something sharpened, pay a lot of money, and walk all the way back, because they didn't have any cars or anything back then. So it came about, verse 22, on the day of battle, that there was neither sword nor spear in the hand of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan. But they were found with Saul and Jonathan his son, meaning that there were 2 swords for all 600 people. Saul had one, Jonathan had one, that's it. The rest of the guy had fisticuffs? I don't know. What were they going to fight with? Maybe they had slings like David had. You know, that'd be something, right? But, you know, with 30,000 chariots, your sling probably doesn't feel like it's going to do a whole lot of good. So what were you going to do? Well, that's why they were hiding. Except for Jonathan. Verse 23, and the garrison of the Philistines went out to the pass of Michmash. That's the scene for chapter 14. Ooh, that rhymes. Okay, now it happened one day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, went to the young man who bore his armor. Come, let us go over to the Philistines, the garrison that is on the other side, but he did not tell his father. I wonder why. And Saul was sitting on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree, which is in Migron. The people who were with him were about 600 men. So we're back to the 600. Saul is relaxing under a pomegranate tree, probably thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Everybody's looking at me. I got no idea. Jonathan's like, I think we should get started. So he says to his armor bearer, this the guy who's supposed to, it's a young boy, and young probably like in his teens, right? Because you can't have like a 3-year-old carrying armor. So it'd probably be somebody in his teens, someone who's, you know, big and strong enough, but still young. It's like, hey, let's go over to their side where the Philistines are. What do you think that kid said? Well, I know because I read the passage, but you know, if you just think about it, it'd be like, are you crazy? What, you want to go over there where all the enemy is? You know, it's just like, well, why? But that's not what he says. Oh, I forgot. Verse 3 says, Abiah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest, at Shiloh, was wearing the ephod, but the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Okay, so before I get to what Jonathan did, because that's what I'm really excited about, Ahiah, he's the great-grandson of Eli. Remember, Eli is the old fat priest who, he was fat. The Bible says he was fat. He was sitting in a chair. He died because he fell off the chair and broke his neck. He was fat. So Eli's great-grandson is now the priest, but he's not supposed to be the priest. God kind of cursed that line with Eli and his sons, right? Phinehas and the other guy. He says, you guys are done being the priest because you guys are horrible priests, really, and so you're fired. And so he's going to make another line, and I actually asked somebody about this because I was like, well, who's priest after this guy? Because they kind of died off, right? And then you go back to Aaron, and you trace his lineage down another branch, and that one of those guys become the next high priest later on. But this guy's not supposed to be the high priest, right? He was removed from high priest because his family had sinned against the Lord. But that's who Saul has in his camp, being the high priest. Saul's not looking at doing what's right. He's looking for appearances. Saul's the kind of Christian, if he were to live today, he'd be the kind of Christian that looks like a Christian, talks like the Christian, but his heart's not for the Lord. He'd done some great things for the Lord. Everyone was like, yeah, that was cool. Good job getting those victories for the Lord. But he's like, hey, I'm pretty good. Good thing God has me around. Has anyone thought that thought before? Good thing God has me around. Peter had that thought, right? Good thing we're here, Lord. Let us build tabernacles for you and Moses and Elijah. This is awesome. And he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually, God the Father spoke down at that point, saying, this is my son, listen to him. Because Peter wasn't listening. And if you ever think it's about you, you're not listening to the Lord. It's not a good thing that you're here, although I'm glad you're here, but it's a good thing that God is here. God's the one who needs to be here. It's good that you're here because you get to interact with God who's here. But he's the one who brings the power. He's the one who brings the victory. We just kind of show up. My former pastor, I don't want to call him old because I don't think he would like that. My former pastor said that Christians are like the jersey that God puts on when he goes in the battle, or when he goes, like, if life was a football game, we're not really like the players. We're just the jersey that God puts on when he goes and wins the game. Like, we don't do a whole lot but ride on his back, is what he's saying. And it's like, that makes a lot of sense. Because if we were the players, well, guess what? In football, we're like, ooh, he's a good quarterback. Ooh, he's a good running back. Ooh, he's a good, whatever the guy is called that catches the ball. You know, and so I know it's called the wide receiver, but it's funnier that way. And so it's not about us, it's about the Lord. And it always has to be about the Lord, because if it's not about the Lord, you're Saul, you're not David. You're not Jonathan, you're Saul. I don't want to be Saul. Both Sauls, Old Testament Saul, New Testament Saul, weren't good guys. That's why the New Testament Saul changed his name. He's like, don't remember me for what I've done. Know me for who I am now. And now he was the person who followed the Lord. So Jonathan goes. He takes his armor bearer out. He says, between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a sharp rock on one side and a sharp rock on the other side. The name of one was Boaz, the name of the other was Senah, and the front faced northward opposite Michmash, and the other southward opposite Gibeah. If you're in the Old Testament geography, this would tell you exactly where it is. I have no idea. Then Jonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised, meaning the Philistines, and it may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing restrains the Lord by saving by many or by few. So the armor-bearer said to him, do all that is in your heart. Go then, and here I am with you according to your heart. Okay, I talk about how much faith that Jonathan has. Like, hey, let's just go fight the Philistines. That sounds like a lot of fun. Let's go. I have more respect for the armor-bearer. It's like, all right. Because he's not feeling like we need to go. But Jonathan is. He's like, hey, I'm with you. Whatever you want to do, I'm with you. He sees Jonathan as someone who's following the Lord. But what kind of man, what kind of relationship would Jonathan have to have with his armor bearer for someone to say, yeah, all right, let's go risk our lives? Why not? He had to see that Jonathan was a man of prayer. He had to see that Jonathan was a man of courage. He had to see that Jonathan was not his father. Because everyone sees his father, he's hanging out under the pomegranate tree. Jonathan's like, hey, I got a sword, let's go. Armor bearer's like, I don't have a sword, but I'll go with you. And it's like, all right, I'll go. And we all need armor bearers in our lives. If we're going to be a Jonathan, we need an armor bearer. And if you're not a Jonathan, if you're like, I don't know if God's calling me to do that, I don't know if I could just get up and go, maybe you're going to be someone's armor bearer. And if you're married, you're probably your spouse's armor bearer. Because before I got married, I was full-on fledged for the Lord. I was doing everything I could for the Lord. And when I got married, it was harder because, now I have this family that I'm taking care of and leading. It's just like I don't get to do as much stuff outside of the house for the Lord. Now some of the stuff I have to do is inside. And it's good, but it's hard because I just want to come do stuff like this all the time. I want to teach Bible studies every single day. I don't get to. I had to give up teaching a Bible study because my first son was born. I had to give up teaching another Bible study because my second son was born, and I just needed the family time. And I'm sad that I had to give those up, but I realized that it's worth it because my sons need me to be there, and it's a great thing. It's hard. And I don't know if I could do all of that if my wife wasn't my armor bearer. If she wasn't praying for me, if she wasn't saying, okay, I'll go with you, let's go. If she's not with me, I don't know if I could do this on my own. Before, when I was single, God gave me the strength to do it on my own. And now when I'm married, God gave me my wife. And I could go stronger. I can go farther now. It doesn't take, I can't spend all the time on it, but what I am doing is I'm trying to raise these boys to be an extension of my ministry, that I would teach them about the Lord and they would teach others as they get older. I mean, right now they're really young, so I'm still in the teaching phase. But that's the current plan. That my children would go on giving out the Lord the way God's given me to. And that anyone I can influence, hopefully, will be that same way. I need my armor bearer. And you need yours. And maybe you're somebody else's armor bearer. But I love his faith. All right, go ahead, do it. I'm with you. And I've talked to couples where the wife has told their husband, I'm reading the Bible, and the Bible says you're supposed to be in charge. So I'm going to stop trying to be in charge, and I'm going to trust you to be in charge. And the husbands always go, oh, no. Because guys, like, we would rather not have the responsibility if we could help it. But we know it's for us. God tells us to do it. And I think the reason that God tells the wives to submit to their husbands is because the husbands need to be in charge or they won't do anything. Personal theory. You can talk to me about that later. Then Jonathan said, very well, let us cross over to these men. So now that you're on board, armor bearer, who doesn't have a name, by the way. And how cool is that we don't know his name? You'd be like, well, that stinks for the armor bearer. We don't get to know his name. We can't talk about him. We can't write any songs about him. But how cool is it that we don't know his name? Because he's just someone who says okay to the Lord. He's like you and me. People don't have to know my name to know I love the Lord, to know I follow the Lord, because if they did, they might talk about me and stop talking about the Lord. I would rather be an unnamed disciple of the Lord than a named Saul, king of Israel. So this is the plan. This is Jonathan's big plan. He's thought this through. We'll show ourselves to them. If they, this is verse 9, say thus to us, wait till we come to you, and we will stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say thus, come up to us, then we will go up, for the Lord has delivered them into our hand, and this will be a sign to us. I love this plan. We're going to go and stand out till they see us. And if they say, wait there till we come down to you, we're just going to wait here. If I was the armor bearer, like, then what happens? You know? He doesn't say. We're just going to wait. And if they say, come up to us, then we know that God is with us and we're going to win. How do we know that? But Jonathan knows. Armor bearer's like, all right, let's do it. So the both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, look, the Hebrews are coming out of their holes where they have hidden. And the men of the garrison called to Jonathan, his armor bearer, saying, come up to us, and we will show you something. I wonder what they wanted to show him. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord has delivered them into the hand of Israel. It's like, that's it. So they saw him. It's like, come on up. So we're going up. And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and knees with his, how do you hold the sword if he's climbing on his hands and knees? He had to put it away, right? Maybe he'd have the armor bearer hold it. And his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan as he came after him, the armor bearer killed them. So they get up to the top and they start slaughtering the Philistines with their one sword. Maybe after Jonathan killed the first one, the armor bearer could pick up the sword of the guy he killed. Who knows? But the armor bearer doesn't usually fight. But this case, he's fighting. It's Jonathan's armor bearer versus a whole garrison of Philistines, just the two of them. In the first slaughter, which means there's more than one, which Jonathan, his armor bearer, made, was about 20 men within half an acre of land. For years, I thought that was half an hour. It's half an acre. I don't know how I read that wrong for so many years, but it's just half an acre. And I have like 2 acres at my house. Half an acre is not that huge to have a battle fighting 20 guys versus 2. It gets small real quick. And so Jonathan, his armor bearer, was able to defeat 20 men. That's 10 each, right? That's a lot of guys. And then there was trembling in the camp. God put fear in the hearts of the Philistines. And in the field, and among all the people, the garrison and the raiders also trembled, and the earth quaked. that it was a very great trembling. Not only did their hearts tremble, the ground trembled. God showed up. Jonathan stepped out in faith. His armor bearer, in my opinion, stepped out in more faith, and God showed up. God always shows up. If he was Saul, he's like, well, let's wait till God shows up, and then we'll go fight. Jonathan's like, no, I'm going to go fight. God's going to show up. I know he is. Maybe God told Jonathan in his heart. I don't know how that happened because the Bible only says what it says. But Jonathan was confident that the Lord was going to show up, and he did. I remember being a new Christian and discovering that, hey, if I expect God to do something big today, he does it. And so I'd wake up, what's God going to do today? And I would start looking everywhere I went because I was in college at the time. I'd go to classes and look, what's God going to do? And I would see something every time. Someone's heart would soften before the Lord. Sometimes it was like, oh, it's pouring rain outside. I didn't bring my jacket. And as soon as I walk outside, the rain stops. Sometimes it was just that. And I was like, thank you, Lord. It wasn't like, oh, what a coincidence. It's like I'm looking for God, the work in my personal life, everyday life. And when I look for it, I see it. God shows up when you expect him. Expect him. I think one of the biggest robberies we do is when we rob ourselves of seeing God's work. I remember when I was first spending time with the woman that would be my wife, and we would be driving or walking or whatever we were doing together, and like the sunset would happen. Not the sunrise, because I never got up that early. Sometimes I stayed up that early, but she wasn't around at those times. But at the sunsets, and she would say, my dad made that. And it always took me a second, at least at first, until I got used to it. It's like, wait, I gotcha now. That's dad. But it's like she gave glory to the Lord for it. How cool is that? If we stop looking for the blessings of God, we stop seeing them. And if we stop seeing them, we stop thanking him for them. If we stop thanking him for them, are we still getting them? Look for the blessings of the Lord. Thank him for his blessings. He's going to want to keep giving. If you, let's say you visited the family once a week, and every time you visit them, you brought them a little gift. Maybe it was just like a little candy for one of the little ones. And we're pretending mom says it's okay. And so you bring them a little candy. Every time you see, every week you come and you just bring them a little something. And they're so grateful. They're thanking. They give you a hug. They're happy. They're singing. They're whatever, makes you want to keep bringing that, right? But if they go, and don't even say thank you or thanks, and they just take it and walk away, you're like, I'm not going to bring one of those anymore. It's just because it's not like you need that thank you to be happy, but it's just like, hey, I'm doing this extra special thing for you. It'd be nice if you acknowledged it. God does that nice special thing for us all the time. And we're like, it's about time. It's about time you showed up, God. If you weren't going to show up, I was going to go after somebody else. I've actually met people who are like that. If God doesn't do this, I'm going to stop believing in him. I'm like, you don't believe in him now. God has nothing to lose. That's true, by the way. God has nothing to lose. He loves you. He wants you. But you can't bargain with him. You can't negotiate with him. And how are you going to negotiate a better deal than I gave my only son for you? You're like, well, I just want to take my sin with me to heaven. God says you can't take it with you. You're like, well, I just want to enjoy my sin for the rest of my life. God says you're not going to enjoy it. Leave it behind. All right, so are we at the part where Saul takes credit for it yet? Not yet. Trembling the camp, earthquake. Verse 16, now the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and there was a great multitude melting away, and they went here and there. So he's the guy on the tower looking out and make sure no one's coming, and he can see the Philistine camp, and he just sees them all running away. That'd be weird. What are they doing? Then Saul said to the people who were with him, now call and roll to see who has gone from us. And when they called the roll, it's only 600 guys. It can't take too long. I don't know, Fred here, Elijah here, Stuart here, just whatever. They get through. Jonathan and his armor bearer were not there. And Saul said to Ahijah, bring the ark here, for at that time the ark of the God was the children of Israel. It's like, hey, bring our magic charm, the ark of the covenant here, because we'll never lose when we have that thing, unlike when Eli's sons did it. Now it happened when Saul talked to the priest that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines continued to increase. So Saul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. It's like, bring the ark here. We're going to try and figure out what's going on. And then as he was talking, the noise in the Philistine camp just got louder and louder. It's like, no time for that. Let's go. And so even if he thinks, let's inquire of the Lord. Let's find out what's going on. He's like, nope, no time for that. Got to go. Then Saul and all the people who were with him assembled, and they went into battle. And indeed, every man's sword was against his neighbor. And there was a very great confusion. So they go over to the Philistine camp, and by the time they get there, they realize the Philistines are just killing each other. They're all confused. They don't even know who the enemy is. They're all killing each other. I'm sure that Saul, or at least the smart guys, were like, hold on, let's just wait here a second, see what happens. Why go in there if they're already doing our job for us? You know, they're like blisters. They show up when the work is done. So Saul and people who were with him assembled, and they went into battle. However, that verse 21. Moreover, the Hebrews who were with the Philistines before that time, who went up with them into the camp in the surrounding country, they also joined the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. So all the Hebrews that ran away, they're like, oh no, the Philistine army is too big. They run away. They see that the Philistines are killing each other. It's like, hey, I'm back. I'm back now. I'm part of this army that has a victory, that's doing nothing. Likewise, all the men of Israel who had hidden in the mountains of Ephraim, who had heard the Philistines fed, also followed them hard in battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle shifted to Beth-Aven. It's about 15 miles away. So the Lord saved Israel because one guy said, let's go, and one other guy said, okay. God doesn't need a whole lot of people. He just needs you. And he's willing to use you if you are surrendered to him. If you surrender to God, you will not have to surrender to the enemy. If you don't surrender to God, then you're going to surrender to the enemy. Simple as that. You choose who do you want to surrender to. The good master who's going to lead us into victory, or the one who's going to enslave us. And the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul placed people under oath, saying, cursed is the man who eats any fruit until evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies. So none of the people tasted food. So Saul is a man of great oaths, right? He wants to sound good. And it's like, all right, we're not going to eat until we beat these guys, until I've taken my vengeance. Which he didn't think that through, right? But the people were like, oh no, I better not do it, or I'm going to get killed. Now all the people of Israel came to a forest, and there was honey on the ground. Remember how, they said this is a land of milk and honey? This is literally a land of milk and honey. Honey is just dripping onto the ground. There are probably cows walking around going, want something to drink? It's just because it's a land of milk and honey. God is providing for them in abundance. But they can't eat any of it because of Saul, their king, who said, hey, nobody eat this or you'll be cursed. So the people had come to the woods, and there was honey dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan, who had not heard his father's charged people with the oath, therefore he stretched out the end of his rod that was in his hand and dipped it in a honeycomb and put his hand to his mouth, and his countenance brightened. I mean, he was tired after killing all those Philistines, right? And when you work really hard, you get hungry. So he goes and like, oh, there's honey just dripping out of the trees onto the ground. I'm going to eat some. So he eats some. He didn't hear what his father said. And can you imagine just like the look of all the people as they watched him do it? It's like they would have been drooling if they had any saliva left, probably. They were just like mouth open, just staring at him like, I wish I could do that. No one thought to say, hey, don't do it. Your father made us promise this stupid thing. And then one of the people said, your father strictly charged people with the oath, saying, cursed is the man who eats food this day. And the people were faint. So after he does it, it's like, oh, by the way, your dad said we couldn't do that. But Jonathan said, my father has troubled the land. Look now how my countenance is brightened, because I've tasted a little of this honey. It's like, I needed this. You need this. That wasn't a good command. How much better if the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies, which they have found, for now would there have been much greater slaughter among the Philistines? If you just accept the blessings of the Lord and be thankful for them, you can enjoy them and you can do more. But because some of us want to be Sauls and look pious and look religious, we pass by some of the blessings. I don't need any help from anybody. I don't need any charity. Have you ever heard someone say, I don't need any charity? It's like, well, yes, you do. You know what charity means? Charity is the Latin word for agape love. They had to make up the word charity in Latin because there was no word that expressed the kind of love agape has. We have no word in English that does it. That's why we take the Greek word agape. But they made up a word called charity in English, and charity was such a good word, and it was used for love for so long, but over time, it became just giving money to somebody who was a nonprofit organization. Giving money away became charity. It became all about money. But it wasn't about money in the first place. It was about the actual self-sacrificing, selfless love. And people say, I don't need that. Yes, yes, you do. Everyone needs charity. Everyone needs that agape love. You need it from the Lord. You need it from the people around you. You need to give it to everyone you meet. We all need it. If we don't have it, it's a horrible place. So no one ever say, I don't need any charity, because you need it. Especially if you're saying it, then you definitely need it. Verse 31, now they had driven back the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon. So the people were very faint. And the people rushed out to the spoil, which means it must have been evening already, because that means the curse was over, or the time it was over when they had to fast, and took sheep, oxen, and calves, and slaughtered them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood. Like they just were killing them and eating them right there in the field. They were so hungry. I'm thinking one day, come on, guys. Then they told Saul, saying, look, people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood. It's like they're breaking the law. God says, drain the blood first. So he said, you have dealt treacherously. Roll a large stone with me to me this day. Saul's going to fix this problem. Disperse yourselves among the people and say to them, bring me here every man's ox and every man's sheep, and slaughter them here and eat. Do not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood. So the people brought the ox with him that night and slaughtered it there. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. This was the first altar that he built to the Lord. Now Saul said, let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until the morning light. Ooh, he likes to rhyme too. And let us not leave a man of them. And they said, do whatever seems good to you. And the priest said, let's draw near to God here. So Saul's like, hey, let's go down and get the rest of the guys. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. And the priest is like, maybe we should ask God first. And because of time, I'm just going to summarize the rest of the chapter. What happens is he's like, okay, let's ask God. God, should we go down and do it? No answer. God doesn't say a thing, right? It's like, well, God's not answering us. Let's find out why. Maybe somebody sinned against the Lord. God, who sinned against the Lord? Was it me or my son Jonathan, or was it the people? And then the Lord answers. It was you. It was either you or your son Jonathan. There's a way that they sought the Lord with the Unum and the Thummim. And there's two stones, black and white, and then they would kind of do some kind of casting, and they could get yes/no answers. And they believe those yes/no answers came from the Lord. And I actually believe that it's true. I think God does answer in that kind of thing. Every time I've had to approach the Lord and ask him to speak to my heart about a specific issue, it's always easier to hear him if I ask him a yes or no question. And so, make it yes or no. And he can speak more than yes or no. But I found it with my particular sinful mind and my sinful heart, it's easier to hear yes or no. I used to go on a walk, and I would call it a faith walk because, I was single at the time, so I didn't have to be home at a certain time. But it's just like I just start walking straight, along a road, and then I'd be praying the whole time. It's like, God, if you want me to turn left, tell me to turn left. If you want me to turn right, tell me to turn right. If you don't tell me anything, I'm just going to keep walking straight. And then I'd feel the Lord saying in my heart, go left. So I would turn left on that street and then go right. And I'd just walk like a zigzag around while I'm praying. And God always brought me to meet somebody that I didn't think I'd meet. I'd see somebody I know or talk to somebody I didn't know, and ended up being a great time. And then sometimes he just kind of bring me home in the long one, and I just got 2 hours of prayer in. And that was still a good time. And it's just like, I'm trusting the Lord to do this for me because I want to learn to listen to your voice. And I want to learn to obey your voice. And I'm not saying you have to do that. That's just what I did. But that desire is a good desire. And so when Saul wanted to learn the voice of the Lord, he inquired, which is a good thing. And then he finds out that Jonathan was the one who sinned. And he's like, Jonathan, what did you do? He's like, I just ate some honey. Now I must die. He's like, surely you must die. And I wonder, what Saul felt at that moment. It's like, oh, no, I have to kill my son? Or is it like, well, finally, you've been causing trouble for me since you started attacking the Philistines? Because later on, he tries to kill Jonathan. When Jonathan sticks up for David, he throws a spear at his own son. Good thing Saul's not a very good shot. And so Jonathan's like, well, all right, I guess I'll have to die. And people are like, wait, what are you doing, Saul? You can't kill your own son. He's the one who led us in the battle. The reason we have a victory and we're not hiding in rocks and caves is because of Jonathan following the Lord. You can't do that. And so the people saved Jonathan's life that day. But it also showed that Saul wasn't as in charge as he thought he was. There are many Christians who are a Saul. They think they're Christian. They think they're following the Lord. But really, they're just trying to promote themselves. All the cults that ever happen because one guy elevates himself above the Lord. The Bible says this, but really, this is what God wants you to do. Don't believe the Bible, believe my interpretation of the Bible. If someone ever says that or anything like that, it's a cult. Get out. You don't want to be around there. You might love the people who are there, pray for them, but it is not a good place. People are not elevated above the Lord and above His word. But those are the Sauls of this life. I know I'm sinning against the Lord, but I just want to look good in front of everybody else. That everybody thinks I'm a Christian. That's a Saul. The Jonathans are like, let's go do it. The Davids are like, I messed up, but I'm sorry. Let's go do it. We want to be Jonathans. We want to be Davids. We want to be armor bearers. We don't want to be Saul. And if there's anybody here who feels like, I've been a Saul lately. I've come to church so that other people could see me come to church, so that I could feel religious, so I could feel like I gave God His 2 cents. And the rest of the week, I live on my own. I do what I want. I don't seek the Lord unless someone says, hey, you should ask God about that. I don't pray by myself unless someone says, hey, you want to pray with me? Or I only pray before meals because I'm in the habit. I don't read the Bible except for at church. But I read the Bible at church, and I can read it with all the faith and vigor of the old King James. Maybe you're a Saul. Stop being a Saul. Give up. Follow the Lord. He is good. He is gracious. He loves you. He wants you to follow Him. Maybe you're a Jonathan who just wants to go out. I feel like I tell the Lord a lot, okay, God, I think this is a good thing. I'm going to do this. If it's not a good thing, or if it's a good thing and you just don't want me to do it, tell me to stop and I'll stop. But if I don't hear anything, I'm going for it. That's the way I like to do things. God doesn't always like that idea. He's like, well, stop then. But I prepared so much to do this thing. It's like, well, you shouldn't have because I didn't tell you to do it. Maybe you're an armor bearer. I don't know what to do. I want to serve the God, but I don't really know where. I'll do whatever. I'll do anything. Someone says, hey, you want to do this with me? You're like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do that. God bless you for being an armor bearer. The Jonathans of this life need it. Maybe you're David. Just love the Lord and sing, and who cares what anybody asks you to do? You're just singing to the Lord and praising the Lord, and if something comes up, you'll take care of it. But really, you'd be happy just following the sheep and praising the Lord and worshiping Him. Those are the people who actually become leaders. Once you feel like, I don't need to be a leader, those are the leaders that God chooses. Let's pray. My Lord Jesus, you are an amazing God. Thank you so much for showing up. You always do. Lord, we commit ourselves to you over and over again, but sometimes I feel like a Saul. Sometimes I feel like I just don't wait on you long enough. I just like, well, I can do it, so I'll just do it. But that's not necessarily your heart. That's not necessarily your will. It's only your will if you tell me to do it, Lord. Help me to seek you more and to wait on your answer. Jesus, I know you died for me on that cross. And I know you cast my sin as far as the east is from the west, and you remember it no more. It's fresh on my mind, Lord, but it's removed from yours. Help me, Jesus, not to focus on what's past, but to learn from it. And instead focus on what you're telling me now. That I can be obedient, Lord, because you say that you require obedience, not sacrifice. If there's anybody in here who has not yet chosen to follow the Lord, but you want to tonight, raise your hand and I'll pray with you. The Bible says you're a sinner, that the wages of sin are death. But Jesus died on that cross for you to pay for your death so that you could be alive in him. And because he died for you, you get to live for him every day. Is there anyone who wants to accept that now for the first time? If so, raise your hand. And maybe you already are a Christian, but you realize I've got some Saul tendencies, and I want to give those up. Before the Lord, confess those quietly. You don't have to tell me about it. I don't need to know your sin. Confess to the Lord on how you've been a Saul, and ask him to soften your heart so that you would be a man after his own heart. Jesus, we love you. We can't serve you enough. We can't love you enough for what you've done for us. And we thank you that we don't have to try, that we could just trust in you. And we love that we get to make you smile. Thank you, Jesus. We pray this in your precious name.